You are listening to Fantha Tracks.
Because of the following special program, Wonder Woman and the Incredible Hulk will not be presented this evening.
I got Fantha.
It's time to get all your Star Wars news in a single file.
That doesn't sound too hard.
Boom! This is Making Tracks.
This is the way.
Here are your hosts, Mark Newbold and Mark Mulcaster.
I know these people. They are brutal. Does this look Jedi to you?
That's not how the Force works.
They'll never see it coming.
Count me in.
Misa back.
Hello, and welcome to this very special episode of Making Tracks Reaction Chats. Rule the galaxy across the Space Whale Pond. Literally couldn't make a episode title longer for a podcast, but that's what we've done. And I'm here with not only the hardest working man in the galaxy and the Star Wars community, obviously Mr. Mark Newbold, but more importantly, I am joined by one of the nicest men in the Star Wars community, Mr. Joe Mulinaro. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me. And it's great to have you guys be a part of the Across the Space Whale Pond program. And I'm glad
franchise, Joe. It's a franchise now.
It is. Yes, it's a franchise. It's overseas. It's now crossing continents. I love it. There's going to be people talking about it in Europe and America. It's great. So Across the Space Whale Pond, it really flows after you do it a few times, Mark. Love having you guys on Rule the Galaxy, and I love to be a part of what you're doing in Making Tracks and Fantha Tracks.
I love the fact that you mentioned the word incontinence, because that word comes up a lot on Fantha Tracks. Because we're gentlemen, slightly older, so I just wanted to point that out.
Speak for yourself. Yeah. You wouldn't be surprised how many times the episodes have to be paused for a pee break. You know, that might be partly because we spend an hour talking before we hit record, because somebody forgets to hit record, and other times it's just because we drink too much.
Mr. Mulcaster, I bet you run into that quite a bit in the 501st gear when you put that on and you get caught for pee breaks.
I tell you what, you have to, especially in the Boba Fett, the Stormtrooper is not necessarily as bad. You can kind of get out of it pretty quick. But Boba Fett, you have to really time it, you know.
Because it's a jumpsuit, isn't it, I guess?
Well, so it's a jumpsuit, and then basically what you've got, you know, let's go through it. You've got the jumpsuit, then you've got the cod piece with the kidney belt, the girth belt, and the ammo belt. Then you've got the flak vest, you've got the jetpack, and the helmet. And UK Garrison rules, which is the rules that we follow as well in Rebel Legion, is that you try not to break character too much, but also you don't go out in half costumes if you can really avoid it. So there's been a couple of times, and I think there's only once that I kind of got really close to the mark whereby I thought I was going to just leave a wet stain or something. I got into kit at MT in Birmingham, and it was back in the day when we used to do parades with a group photo at the end of the parade. So you're probably out in kit for, I would say, about an hour and a half sometimes, maybe a little bit longer, just because a parade takes a long time to organise, then the group photo takes a long time to organise, and then you have to get back. And oh my God, yeah. I stood on those stairs, literally hopping from one leg to another, going, this is not good. This could be it.
Would it have been a stain on your reputation?
Yeah, but I tell you what, I kind of reckon that it would have probably been fine. Like, it would have been an extra bit of weathering, you know. You know, so it'd be fine, you know.
Yeah.
It was close, really close.
You're such a professional.
I'm not. Clearly, I'm not.
Industry professional. Yeah, and let's face it. I'm so glad now that we have actual refreshers being brought up in The Mandalorian. Yeah, we've seen them, we've discussed them. So at least it makes me feel better that the people who are wearing that gear in the galaxy far, far away do really have restrooms to take care of themselves.
Yeah, there was one time I was in my X-Wing pilot, and I drank too much and I needed to go. And that's at a space center. And luckily with the X-Wing pilot, you've kind of got a double zip on the flight suit. So you tactically leave one down and then you just zip up the other. Anyhow, so like, it's the only time I've really been kind of really caught short. And I was like, I'm in there and I'm in the public toilets, and this kid kind of goes, "Dad," pointing at me. And I was like, haven't you ever seen a pilot take a whiz before, kid?
This is the content our listeners come for.
Yeah, that's right. Fantha Tracks gets Joe on the show and we talk about going to the restroom. This is fantastic.
Hey, this will be for the extended director's cut. So, okay then, chaps, let's get to it. Have we had any news in the last week since the release of a certain film?
Nothing that stands out as being more important than the film. But one thing I will mention is that Galaxy's Edge on both coasts, Anaheim and Orlando, have added the new additions to Smuggler's Run. So now Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run has now got the Mandalorian and Grogu stuff in it. Obviously, there's an upturn in interest, an upturn in people turning up and having a crack on it. I wanted to ask you guys, firstly, as and when you get the opportunity, who's not going to want to try and do this? But can you think of any other additions that you would like? I'm thinking specifically Star Tours. I've not heard any announcement of new planets coming to Star Tours. Having seen the film, is there a sequence? Is there a world or a location that you think would be a good addition to Star Tours, considering that they usually add something in at some point?
I would love to see the base that they have there, where they met Sigourney Weaver. I'm forgetting the base's name right now. Yes, I would love to see that, just because you could come in and land or take off with all the other ships in the galaxy kind of surrounding you. And I think in the film, that looked so realistic. We talked about it on the show recently.
Yeah.
It almost didn't feel like it was CGI. It looked like that was real. Like you're looking at the B-Wing, the X-Wing, the Y-Wing, and you're going, are they pulling that on a cart right now, right across?
Yeah.
And it looked that realistic to me. So I think that, and then I think now that we've got a live action Nal Hutta, I think that would make a great backdrop and scenery for something happening in the universe in Star Tours.
That's a great shout, especially at the end as the big sort of gunrunner ship is going and they're turning the cannons and you get the little 3D vector Star Wars screens which I loved, all that sort of stuff going off. What about you, Mark?
I tell you what, I think
you want to see the toilets, don't you? You want to see them in the toilets, don't you?
No. No, but I tell you what would be quite cool, and I think you could kind of do it, and it might even be something that would be quite fun to do with Star Tours, because obviously you can't really do it with anything Galaxy's Edge, because it's very much intrinsically tied to like the Falcon and that. Here's my pitch: let's actually have the aliens run like Star Tours. Yeah. Ultimately, you're not going to be able to fit in their ship, but it would be kind of cool to see something actually from their kind of perspective and scale. You know, so like flying through like Tatooine, and like you're getting like attacked by Womp Rats, which are like equivalent of like 20 foot tall and that, So,
well, you see them shoot a Womp Rat, don't you? You see them take one out.
Exactly. Yeah, that which is one of the greatest moments, because you just think like in the whole how inconsequential is that? But for them, that's like the greatest fist bump. That's the kind of thing they tell their kids when they go back, isn't it? Like I
bullseye a Womp Rat, and he was a whole meter tall.
It was blind as a bat because Grogu had got him first, so he wasn't actually going to cause any threat. Something like that would be kind of fun, and I think you could kind of do that with Star Tours, because it has that. It is that more zany, isn't it?
Yeah.
But even just flying through that hut tree thing, because it's really weird. Because I mean, it doesn't matter how many times I've seen the film. It's like it's a really weird kind of construction. They kind of break into it, and also when like Mando blows a roof, it's almost like it's a rubber tree.
It's like webbing, isn't it?
It's webbing and stuff. It's like it's when you cut into a rubber tree and make it very strandy and stuff.
It also had, like in Stranger Things, when they were inside, that goo elastic kind of feel to it.
Stuff. Yeah.
Yes, it had that to it as well when it was breaking apart, I feel like.
It's a really interesting Vixus. Yeah. That'd be kind of cool. So there you go. So that's my idea.
That's a good shout. And whilst I mentioned 3D Vector Star Wars of Dark Forces Remastered, which is a cracking review, by the way, because you go back into the history of the game. So that was very cool. More of that, please. My question to both of you on a similar tack. Obviously, those games are out of canon now. They're Legends, or EU, as we used to call them. And there's things in there that films like Mando and Grogu, and certainly films that are going to come along in the future, will sort of touch on, pick up, little hints and nods of things here and there. How valuable do you think those games are in 2026? Obviously, the game mechanics is 90s game mechanics. They've spruced it up quite nicely, made it look pretty, frame rate's better, all the other stuff that you mentioned in the review. But do you think there's a value to those games now? Maybe just in terms of mining little quirky things that just make guys like us go, I like that. Or are they just a relic of the past?
I have always been more of a viewer of the games and not a participant in the games. I was never much of a gamer person, but I enjoyed watching my friends who were really into gaming play. And I was kind of taking it as like my own little miniature Star Wars show or movie that I was watching on the screen, because I just don't have the hand-eye coordination. But I would say, I think right now where we are with Star Wars overall, we always talk there's different entry points for people in Star Wars. Some of it was the games, some was the Legos, some were the animated series. My opinion is, as we move forward and we have a creative like Dave Filoni in charge, I think they should take anything and everything they can out of that. I have people who we talk to on Rule the Galaxy that the games are just as important. The characters, the scenery, the places they go there. So I'm all for it, even though I'm not a gamer. So Mark, you're much more on top and wrote an article about it. So I'm sure you've got more than that.
Well, I mean, no, to be fair, I mean, I kind of do completely agree. The thing that reminded me as to how important, gaming is with Star Wars is when I was writing my article, you play this character, Kyle Katarn, and then there's now 20 odd books written about him or where he's included in it. Bear in mind that you kind of think he started off as Han Solo-esque smuggler, roguey kind of character. And then by the end of it, he's on the Jedi Council. He's on Luke's Jedi Council, which is fantastic how the expanded universe was able to do that, take one character and kind of transition them over.
But don't you think, though, that it's now in these days when we talk about the sort of the link between all the medias, and we kind of tend to think, it's a multimedia thing, yada, yada. And you go back to the 90s, and you've just probably on one of the very best examples, Kyle Katarn, coming from the game into the books, into the fabric of the Star Wars world. Okay, pre-2014 when they hit the reset button.
Right.
But nevertheless, what we're seeing now with all this linkage between books, comics, and different media was happening decades ago in Star Wars anyway. It's nothing new.
Yeah. For me, and this year is the 30th anniversary of Shadows of the Empire. That was really the first multimedia campaign that Lucasfilm did. You had the soundtrack, you had the book tie-in, you had the Dark Horse Comics tie-in, obviously you had the computer game on multiple different platforms, and you had Hasbro releasing action figures. So it covered the full gamut of what Star Wars collecting was, and that was for a game. I listened to the audiobook the other day and it works. It's kind of an enjoyable kind of thing. I'd love to see, and I think you could see it in something like a Mando series. You could, maybe something like Dash Rendar just kind of rocks up for an episode.
100%.
That would be totally cool. With the Outrider, even better. So...
Well, you saw the Outrider in the special edition, so it's in canon.
Yeah, well, and the Feline and the Black Sun, they made their way into Clone Wars or Rebels or something. So,
Clone Wars,
Yeah, it's all kind of like in canon these days. It's definitely worth looking at, and there's been times, was it in Skeleton Crew, but you had some of those Golan freighters, those big kind of blocky kind of like freighters, and that which were in X-Wing.
The Gazanti freighters.
The Gazanti freighter, thank you. Yeah, I think so, yeah. Because the Gazanti freighters basically, that was just down to the limitation of the technology at the time. They were just...
Only so many pixels would fit. Yeah.
Exactly. It was very kind of polygon cubic, and that's how they look still today, obviously with nicer textures on it, but it's nice that you could do that. And it's kind of what I actually think Jon Favreau said on the press tour, is that actually, there are some deep cuts into like Mando and Grogu, but it's not like you miss anything if you don't know them. They're there for people who, been around and have lived a Star Wars life, shall we say. But if it's your first time watching a Star Wars film, you're going to be number wiser, but you're not going to miss anything. You're not going to feel like you're not in on the joke. It's a way that I would like more Lucasfilm storytelling to go in the future.
With today's technology, I mean, let's think about it. In 1996, when that was going on, how choppy and blocky it was to play a computer game compared to now. And now you can have all this interactive stuff going even to the next level that we thought was incredible back in the 90s, right? Like kids today would look at this and go, were you riding dinosaurs when you were playing this game? Now you mix in YouTube things and social media and podcast platforms and everything else, the amount of crossover you could do with a project. I love how we started into High Republic and we were like, okay, we're going to do this huge project. And maybe it fizzled towards the end and it didn't hit maybe where it wanted to be. But I was one who was believing, hey, let's do an animated series and some action figures in with what they're doing with the books, and I'll jump into it even more.
Yes.
So I think if they can keep tying those things together, I would love it. I'd love to see it cross-pollinate across all the platforms.
There's definitely an audience for it. I think sometimes with people like Hasbro and that, they worry about being able to get slots in the production lines and stuff like that. So I know there's more factors, but we're in a 3D printing world now. You kind of think there'd be something that could figure around it.
Hi, this is Robert Ems, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks.
They've just announced a 7-part adaptation of the Book of Boba Fett. It's 2026. And to my best recollection, Book of Boba Fett came out in 2022. When we were kids, we were reading the adaptation of Star Wars before the film came out. So it's a massive change. Do you think there's a value in this? Do you think it's worthwhile doing it? Is it an easy win because they're basically just copying what's on screen and taking the script and adapting it for a comic? Or should they just leave it be? I think it's worth it purely for the covers. I think the covers are gorgeous, and I tend to buy it for the covers. I think they do a beautiful job with that. And yes, I want everything adapted because we've had adaptations all the way through since back in the day. But they didn't adapt every episode of the Clone Wars, and they've not adapted every episode of the Bad Batch. They're only adapting the live action stuff. So, and I don't think they're going to adapt Andor. That'd be fun. So let's see where they go with that.
We've just had Mando and Grogu released. There's no novel with like tie-in, which I'm a little bit annoyed. Well, yeah, a little bit annoyed about. I mean, I think it's did we get one for Solo? Yeah, we did get one for Solo, didn't we? Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is the first like Star Wars film that has come out that we haven't had a novel really tying to it.
I love that we had the adaptations of the original movies and then the comics in between and the adaptations of the comics while it was going on. I thought that was fantastic. And yes, there was some weirdness because every now and then either the movie production was ahead of the comic or the comic was ahead of the movie. And so they were thinking they were following the same line. And there were some slight blips, right?
Yeah.
Because they had to, hey, we got to put this scene in. Oh, we got that scene pulled out of the movie, but now it's in the comic, for example. I think there's always an advantage to do an adaptation of everything because people take in different forms of media. Brent Dykman on our Rule the Galaxy show will not read a book. And now he's got to where he does audiobooks.
Yeah.
But I think he's seeing even that it grows the story. There's more depth in it for everything that you do, whether it's on the screen or whether it's animated or whatever, if you add that adaptation as well. So do I want them to do it 4 years later? No, not really. I'd rather them do it either during or right after. But we're not in their production line. We're not in their decision-making meetings. But I will always love to have, I mean, the books I have behind me, and most of them are up there, the novels of the movies, right? Well, why even have those if you're watching the movies? Well, they go into more depth and have other stories inside there. So
was it Matthew Stover's Revenge of the Sith is like one of the best, I think, Star Wars like stories, full stop. Now on the flip side to that, I think so where sometimes the like the adaptations of novels kind of fall down is when you don't get the inner monologue, because that is a perfect thing that books are for. Because you can obviously, you can describe things in more detail and stuff. And I remember reading like I think it was the Force Unleashed audio. Well, I was listening to the audiobook of the Force Unleashed novelization, and I thought to myself, it just feels like somebody's just kind of like describing playing the game. A little bit, there's a little bit more to it than that, but I was just like, it just felt really procedural and just not very inspired. And maybe it's probably quite a big ask to actually write a story around like a computer game like that, because like, how do you kind of describe some of this stuff that is kind of happening?
Right.
But I was just like, let's just say it didn't make me love like the Star Killer character any more or any less, to that matter. It's a weird thing with like this book of Boba Fett, isn't it? It's like, I'm guessing they must have just had a gap in their production schedule and looked at it, being very pragmatic and gone, what haven't we put out? What can we put out? Are we going to get a Mando and Grogu novelization? Or is this going to be part of this whole locked down Mandoverse that Filoni and Favreau have kind of kept a real tight lid on, and therefore don't seem to, ironically, let anybody else play in the sandbox with them, which I think is a little bit risky and can only really work for so long. I mean, I don't really think the Star Wars publishing at the moment is anywhere near as strong as it used to be. Go back even to like 5-6 years ago.
Yeah, well, I mean, during the sequel timeframe, they were pumping out books. I mean, it was once a month you had either something related to the sequels or, hey, we're going to do a filler story from something you had learned before that maybe was like Dark Disciple, a whole series that wasn't going to be made to an animated series. Let's just make into the book. I think movies and TV shows are for the masses. The books, and then follow that up with the comics, takes you into the depth, the levels of the depth. Like you said, you can watch a scene in a Star Wars movie, and it's a great scene. But people like you and I, who have been Star Wars fans our whole lives, we're thinking, I wonder what this character's thinking right now in this situation. Wonder what else is just adjacent. Like we've got the books with Shadows of the Empire, where Prince Xizor was just off to the side when the Emperor and Darth Vader were talking, right? And he's got thoughts about their conversation. So I think if you say for the masses, for the regular everyday person out there who is a pretty just relaxed Star Wars fan, yes, movie and big TV series, great. For the next level, it's okay, there's people like us who do podcasts and so forth, or have been a fan our whole lives. Let's add that depth. Let's add that extra stuff that we want to see in a book, and then follow it up maybe with a video game or a comic, depending on what level. So I'm all for it. I think crossing it over all these platforms is great, and I want to see more of it. Initially, I thought when I first saw the Book of Boba Fett thing being announced, I thought they were saying, hey, there's not going to be a season 2. We're just going to go ahead and continue the story in the comics.
Yeah.
I didn't see initially that it was the adaptation. I thought it was, because I was like, oh, great. But then adaptation, I was like, no, adaptation would have been really good in 2022 or 2023.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I need it right now.
Yeah. I mean, unless they've got access to, obviously we're going to have access to the scripts and screenplays as well, but if there's content in there or deleted scenes that may have been removed that they can add in, that would be kind of cool, because that's obviously the bonus of that. But then, like, the thing is with TV, everything's so much more tighter, so you don't tend to have the wastage that you do in film. You know, you write your script, and then that's your shooting script, and then you go and shoot it. And obviously dialogue changes, but generally the beats are there. But you never know, there might be some stuff. And the thing is also, some things that doesn't necessarily work on the screen seem to work better in print. I guess we'll see. We'll get, and then obviously it opens up the question is, yes, do they then continue? So are we going to now get a Book of Boba Fett? Because I think they've wound down quite a few of the main like Star Wars titles, and so it's quite empty on the bookshelves when it comes to new Star Wars comics. But it would be kind of a fun way to do it, and especially if they're not going to do a season 2, or maybe this is a way of testing the water. Well,
similar to this topic, one of our people came on the chat and they said, and I'll throw this out to you, we think, even though Mando was great and we had a fun time and it was good, and I want to bring back that word fun here in a minute because it came up on our show. After watching Maul and then watching Mando, one of our people in the chat said, do you feel that at present, with the way Maul kind of blew us all away and was really top notch, is animation ahead of where the live action is right now? Because they can push the envelope a little bit more. They can do things in animation they can't get done in live action and things like that. And they can go deeper into the stories with it being artists and voice actors and being able to stretch the physical limits and things like that. And I was like, if today's present Star Wars is Maul in animation and Mando in the movies, I mean, Mando was beautiful. It was a fantastic visual movie for me. I mean, there were some times where I was like, wow, those fights were a little tight cut. I would have liked to have seen them a little bit more stretched out to where I'm seeing like the whole room where the fight's going on instead of so many right up close. But it was hard for me to say that animation hasn't made such leaps and bounds that it could be like, this could be really a leading cutting edge thing to where we could follow some storylines from animation over doing them live action. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
It's kind of apples and oranges on some level. If you were to shoot a live action version of Maul, you would basically be looking at something like the most recent Batman. I think it would be so dark and so moody and gritty. I mean, it would be fantastic. And I certainly would go and see it at least as many times as I've seen Mando and Grogu so far. Yet somehow with animation, you can kind of do that and the tone can be a little bit pronounced. But I do think there's a world where we could do stuff. And I mean, I would love to see an animated Star Wars movie, theatrical release. I don't even want to start pitching ideas and that, whatever it needs to be. Because you think about like when we saw the Clone Wars, how far Lucas animation has gone on since then. And yeah, you take Maul is by far the absolute pinnacle of what they have managed to do for animation so far. And we'll probably look back in 5 or 10 years' time and go, yeah, this stuff that we get now is even better, right? So we can say, well, we looked at like Ahsoka. And I think part of the problem with Ahsoka was the fact that it was very much felt like season 5 of Rebels, which is a very reductive way of looking at it. But there was a lot of kind of baggage left over from Star Wars Rebels. And so I think that is probably a good argument, or at least a cautionary tale to consider how you would maybe transfer live action to animation or vice versa. You totally could do the opposite, like go from live action to animation. And I think Mandalorian and Grogu, that would be a fantastic little fun animated show. Yeah. And actually you could kind of skew that a little bit younger quite easily without it blowing the whole fandom apart. I think it has that inbuilt funness about it. And so it's probably a lot more accessible.
For everything in one location, daily news, reviews, interviews, podcasts, video, and social media feeds, bookmark fanthatracks.com for Star Wars news 24/7, 365.
And that's where I want to bring up the word fun about Mando, if you don't mind. I'm just stealing your show, by the way. I'm just going ahead and going into host mode here.
It's fine because, like, I can sit back and relax and just be the guest.
One of our guests the other day said that fun, I read what a lot of people's comments were. It was a fun movie. That Mando and Grogu was fun, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of people are saying, in the connotation that people are saying it, it's not really a praising of it. It's more of like you went out with some friends, right? And you're like, oh, no, we had a good time. It was fun. That's kind of the way it's feeling and what they're saying. And now my wife went with me the very first time and she watched it and honestly loved all the Enzellan stuff, loved the Grogu stuff, really was into the story, except for she's like, okay, a little too much action fighting. She goes, I was kind of wanting a little more storyline, but that's because that's not her cup of tea, right? Like she doesn't like stabbing and knives and creatures biting people and things like that. But she really enjoyed the movie and it was fun. We talked about it and everybody I've talked to who has kids who've seen it, the kids loved it. The kids who were, 6 to 10 to 12 years old, they're like, oh, music was fun, action, Grogu was funny, and Zellans were funny, seeing different planets, everything, all that was good. And yet there's people, it's almost like a slap in the face maybe to say, oh, it was fun. It was a fun movie. It wasn't some Academy Award winning, going to be in the Oscars kind of a movie. It was Star Wars fun, right? It was an adventure. And I hope people don't take that as fun is a bad connotation. I didn't sit there and go, oh, The Force Awakens was a fun movie. That was not usually something I said. Usually I was like, wow, that was great. And this was going on. That was somehow fun has become kind of a stigma.
And I think that's partly because maybe we're so used to describing Star Wars films in slightly more hyperbole. The last film I think that we've had where people have just come out and said, oh yeah, it's kind of fun, was Solo. And actually on some levels, similar kind of thing. It's like, well, set completely different ends of a timeline and yada, yada, yada. I think because the stakes aren't so galactic, I think with Star Wars, it means that you then reduce the experience down a little bit to you're just having fun. I've listened to a lot of people's reactions and reaction chats or like reviews and stuff. And there are definitely some people who are really dancing around the fact that I think they didn't really like it, but they don't want to say they didn't like it. And so they're saying, oh yeah, it's kind of fun. Okay, cards on the table. I've seen it 7 times now.
And you've got me beat. 2.
Yeah, but it's not a competition. It's just clearly I've got way too much time in my hands. And every single time I've kind of come out, I've enjoyed it. There's not been a moment, even the 10 minutes of pure puppetry back in the scene. I've enjoyed it. It hasn't dragged. I haven't been looking at my watch or anything like that. And it's just an enjoyable film. I'm probably not really getting anything much more out of it now. Like, I don't think there's any kind of gems that I haven't quite discovered and stuff, or kind of like new insights into motivations and story and stuff. It's a good film. It's well produced, well made, and I think it does exactly what it needed to do. I don't see this ever pushing the fandom forward, but I think it gives fandom a bit of a kick up the arse a little bit and keeps things ticking over for next year.
I think this was the appetizer before the main course. I think Starfighter, from everything I'm seeing, I was more jazzed about the Starfighter movie instead of the Mando movie. I like it. I enjoyed it. I will see it again. But I think it was great to be with a community of people wanting to be back in the theater again to watch a Star Wars movie. There's something about it to when the lights go down, the Lucasfilm logo comes up, and you just know, hey, I'm in for an adventure. That is what I think we all missed. And I think Star Wars fans, probably to a person, have said since 2019, when's the next time we can be in a theater watching a Star Wars movie? Yes, they rehashed on the anniversaries older films and things like, which was great. I went to those. But there's something about that spark of seeing something new in the theater. I have not let myself get spoiled, right? And I'm not going to let myself get spoiled even for Starfighter. I want to go into them kind of knowing less than what I need to know and just being surprised, being shocked. I love letting the comedy get to me when Grogu was doing little things. One of the funniest things to me was when he kept tapping the back of Din Djarin's helmet. Like, hey, we got to go. We got to go. We got to go. When the bombs are getting ready. I mean, little things like that. I'm like, I have kids. I have grandkids. I can see that completely being one of them at one point in time. Like, Dad, we got to go. We got to get out of here. So, I hope it gets people's juices flowing again to say, can't wait to go back, get in the theater. I mean, we've got the release of A New Hope coming out, that's going to be out next year. We've got Starfighter next year. That's a lot of behinds in the seats to go see Star Wars movies. And that's what I'm excited about.
The Simon Kinberg trilogy as well. That seems to be something
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just started to see a little bit more people talk about it and I think he spoke about something or other. And it's difficult as a podcast host and that, and you're especially on Fantha Tracks, you're looking for news. You come across stuff that if you were a fan, you wouldn't necessarily want to look at. And then sometimes you kind of feel like you have to. But it is interesting because it does feel like the community or a certain portion of the community, like speak to Mark and yourself, they're kind of hanging their hat on Starfighter. But yeah, there's not really been a huge amount out there about it. What got you so excited about it?
I think the mystery of it all. One, the director, he's done some really great movies, great shows, Levy. So I know he will put a good product out there. Ryan Gosling is very amped up to do this and very excited to do it. And, in today's world, there's only a few people kind of above him on who's getting kind of star ratings, right?
Yeah.
Especially now with Project Hail Mary doing so well and people seeing that he can pull that off and be the lead, especially in a science fiction style show. Those kind of things get me going. And then, like I said, the mystery. I have no clue what it's going to be except where it's going to happen time-wise. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with walking into the theater and going, okay, I know the director. I know the main actors. I know when it's going to happen. Show me something fun, right? Make it something good. Mando, you kind of knew, okay, we're used to what Mando is. We know what Mando is. So if they just make an expanded out version of the show, an adventure for 2 hours, we know what we're going to get. It's like McDonald's. Most people like McDonald's. Gets sold billions of times a day. There's a reason why. It's a certain product and people are accustomed to it and they know what they're getting. Starfighter right now, I don't know what to expect. And I'm waiting.
Right.
Are there going to be hidden things that are going to show up? Are there going to be sparks that are going to lead us into the next plan or path that we're going to follow? I don't know. So that's what's got me going about it.
I think what's got me obviously is the fact that it's the forefront of the timeline. It's kind of blue sky timeline storytelling. And whilst we probably won't get into it this week, we'll leave it for another episode. How tied are you to the legacy and the legacy characters? And from what we understand, and they say this quite easily and throw away, this is in a different part of the galaxy and, it's just a whole new characters and stuff like that. I mean, there's a part where it goes, it is until it isn't. And somebody turns around and says, yeah, but how does this get more people into Galaxy's Edge? Which unfortunately, because you did say it's a commodity at the end of the day. And unfortunately for us, as much as we want it to be on a pedestal, it is a product. It's IP. And every time you sell a ticket and you create a new story, you've got to think about how you can then monetize that story in the best way possible. That aside, and I think most fans are very much aware of that, but we quite happily embrace it. I'm literally tripping over Grogu toppers, popcorn buckets, and so I cannot say that I'm any better or worse than anybody else for that matter. That's what excites me is actually the fact that, if they can be forward looking, even if Starfighter is the transitional film, but then leads us into a Simon Kinberg movie or whatever comes next, that's cool with me. But one thing I've said to a few people is that you've got to remember, in 77, with the exception of Vader flying off and surviving, the rest of that story was done and dusted. If it tanked, and if we only got Splinters of Mind's Eye on TV, if we even got that, then, okay, that is still a perfectly rounded story, and there's a lot that people can get their teeth stuck into. Kind of the same with Mando and Grogu. You can kind of look at it and go, this is just 1 week in their life, and then, there'll be more adventures.
The first time I kind of went through it and we got to the slow part where Din Djarin is down and it's really Grogu leading the way and being the key to the movie. The first time you're looking, you're going, okay, let's see where we're going next after this, right? Like, how is this? Yeah. But the second time I really watched it and I sat there and really took it in, and it really opened my eyes to that was the transition. that was a transition for the perfect line of him saying, the old take care of the young take care of the old. Because so many people will say there's no growth in Grogu, right? Like he's still basically almost the same character from the first season. Like there's little things here, there, a little more force usage, a little bit more connectivity to Din Djarin. But really, the flip happened right then and there. And at the end of the movie, when he says, after telling him all the time, don't touch the buttons, you got to get strapped in and sit in the back. It ends with him, get up here on my lap. I'm going to show you how to do this. It's time for you to press the buttons and take us into hyperspace. And that, to me, the second time I looked and I was like, there was growth. And it does open the door for saying, okay, that was one of the first major steps. Now that Luke's taught him how to meditate, now that he's been training some as a Mandalorian, now it's, okay, you're not just baby Yoda anymore, in air quotes. You're now Grogu. You're the apprentice. I have to teach you because I'm going to be gone soon. You're going to be here for a long time. Yeah. So if they take that step and then go into Mando season 4, if they do that, and you really keep growing with him that whole time, now you have blue sky for him in movies, TV, whatever, for how long? Because he's going to be 800 years at some point in time, right? So I really enjoyed that part of it after I kind of took a step back and said, is this our slow down breather time? Or is this, nope, okay, now...
It's a watershed moment. He's becoming more autonomous. And you can understand, like, the relationship between the two, he's more comfortable. Mm-hmm. They're both very more comfortable and, they've kind of found their rhythm. And that's very evident at the start of the opening 20 minutes or so. The only one thing that I didn't like, and a couple of people have picked up on this as well, I'm not a huge fan of the way that Din spoke to him a couple of times and he kind of told him to heal. And he was kind of talking to him
like it was a pet.
Like a pet. I almost felt like he was slightly out of character because I don't recall him saying that in the series. I mean, I'd have to go back and rewatch the series, but it just felt like a slight writing bump. And I know you're you're battling your own dog in the recording room, which is quite ironic.
Exactly. Well, I'm telling him to heel off mic because I'm like, don't start barking again.
I mean, there might be a reason for it. Like there must be some kind of writer's justification, but it just felt a little bit off. I mean, I know obviously he's played around with the Anzellans before. You kind of think it's probably the first time they've seen each other for a little while and stuff like that. Right. So to kind of be that kind of stern, I thought I was like, cool, that's some strict parenting going on.
Sometimes you got to, I joke around with my kids. I joke around with my kids and I was like, my dad loved me, but back in the day, there was a different way of getting things done by parents.
Normally called the belt or something like that.
Like I said, when I went to Star Wars the first time, I was 6. My cousin was 9. My cousin was 10, and our parents just dropped us off at the theater. Could you imagine right now a parent dropping off a 6, 9, and 10-year-old at a theater and say, "I'll see you in 2 or 3 hours"?
No, not this day and age. Doesn't happen, does it? No.
So we've all grown up differently, but you're right on the way he kind of spoke to him. I've had that in a note to think about and talk about, but that's something that stood out to me when he was like down, heel, kind of. I was like,
roll over.
Yeah, I was like, exactly. George Lucas always talked about how Chewbacca was kind of supposed to be similar to his dog, right?
Yeah.
But Han did not treat him like a dog at all. It was, this is my right-hand man. This is my buddy, my pal. So,
but I mean, there was that one time, wasn't there, where like Han does kind of like reach up and he kind of like scratches behind, I think, Chewie's ear. But I don't necessarily see, like Han doing that too often in the cockpit. But I'm sure there's probably times. I like the whole button pressing, but I have to say, button pressing to get into hyperspace is not as cool as pulling a lever back. Again, I don't know if there's something they looked at and discussed and stuff. They probably did. We had that control lever, which had the ball that like he nicked. And again, it might be evident the fact that he's grown and he hasn't, he doesn't need to kind of play with the shiny thing. I was almost like, that would have been kind of cool to actually get him to kind of like grasp that lever and press it. But then obviously he's been given permission to press the buttons. It's more literal. And I don't necessarily think they need to develop Din much more, really. There's probably loads of ways that a screenwriter's going, oh, come on, this is easy. But I think if you keep Din kind of like as a constant, then you're going to notice the growth in Grogu more, because it's like you've got that comparison point.
I think one thing that, and I'll call my shot here, I think by the time we get to the end of whatever the Mandalorian series is, whether it's more movies, seasons, whatever. I think the perfect story to pass the torch is Din does pass away at some point in time, and Mando or Grogu becomes the Mandalorian. You've got him to this superhero level. He's what we think of because he's got the armor, which helps him not get killed, destroyed, whatever. And then he's got all these skills, talents, and tools. So he's kind of maxed out where he can be. Yeah. So like you said, see that growth and then the surpassing and go from there.
What would you prefer? Would you prefer it on the big screen, or now do you think they've had the big screen adventure, we can go back to the small screen?
Yes, I do want to see it back on the small screen, believe it or not. I loved having the movie experience, but there's something about seeing 3 seasons of it and expecting it and knowing you're getting it weekly and being able to talk about segment after segment, part after part, that I like much more than trying to go over the 2-hour movie. I'm probably one of the old guys who's like, I don't need every movie to be the end of the universe, kind of blow everything up kind of movie. But at the same time, I like the grandeur of that. I like the single individual stories and the growth, character growth stories. But I've seen those in Clone Wars. I've seen those in Rebels. I've seen that in Maul, all on the small screen. And now Mando, I mean, I wouldn't be against another movie of it. Don't get me wrong. If they throw and say, hey, we're going to throw, instead of season 4, we're going to do a movie, fine, let's go with it. But I kind of want to see a few seasons more of Mandalorian on the small screen.
There's a part of me that thinks that the characters were designed for the small screen. And I think the pacing of the show has always worked really well on the smaller screen. Obviously, this film has shown that they can take that and they can scale everything up. And yes, I think pretty much successfully across the board, it looked bigger. It looked better than what we've ever seen in stagecraft before. Obviously, just again, that's just new iterations of technology and how the crews are getting more used to it and understanding how the limitations can be overcome with different mediums and stuff. However, if you're going to have more Mando and Grogu films on the big screen, it does need to be a little bit bigger. It needs to be a little bit more. I think if you were to put out another one next year or the year after, for example, for argument's sake, I think a lot of people probably be like, because most of my Star Wars friends have seen it, but there are definitely some, and I've spoken to a number who are like, I think I will probably, not too fussed. Like if they haven't seen it already, they might have seen it this weekend or even later, or they're like, I might actually just wait for Disney Plus, which is worrying.
I think it does fall into a good plan to where let it ride in the theaters for a little while, bring it to Disney Plus. All the people who haven't watched it in the theaters are going to say, I'll go ahead and watch it then. And also, it might lead them to watch something else. But I think if we go back to a Mando movie, like you mentioned, I think one of the things that we discussed was there were like 4 or 5 main characters of this movie. That was it, right? And only a few of them were human-based characters. The rest were creatures. If you're going to take that next step, I think they did the right thing by not having Bo-Katan and Cobb Vanth and all these different characters.
Peli Motto and Matt Rock.
Peli Motto, don't blur the lines. Just tell this storyline. Stay clean, stay focused. Then people can say, maybe this is their first time seeing Mando. Now, hey, there's more of this. Oh, and there's a whole kind of little universe built around it. But if they're going to make the next movie, I think that's when you start adding in.
That's when you can. Yeah. Because or even then, like you can build on these characters. So you could have Rotter rock up as a cameo and Zeb maybe. And then, you might find a way to link it in
the Armorer
Ahsoka season 2 or the Armorer. And in fact, that makes a wider storyline and will make it feel bigger. Whereas I think, like you said, if they did it this one, it would feel like, it's just them doing the hits of Mando. And because you would get the same kind of jokes with Peli and stuff like that. I'm hoping anyway that those who are saying, I'll just wait for Disney Plus, when they do watch it, go, do you know what? I wish I'd saw it on the big screen.
I think they will.
The kind of screenings that I've been going to have been slightly random in terms of the times. So like I will go either on my way home from work or, really random times. So it's very difficult for me to gauge how popular the film is because generally I'm going at 11:20 in the morning and there's like 5 people. In fact, that screening, there was just me. I quite like a private screening of Mando and Grogu, and who wouldn't? But for times that I have been in the evening with Karen and there's been more people there, you notice that there's a lot of dads taking their kids and that. And in fact, yesterday I was at Hatfield Odeon and literally sat next to me. Literally, there's only 4 of us in the cinema and we're all grouped in the same 2 rows. But next to me was a mum and her daughter. And I was like, well, that's really cool because, over here you don't tend to see that as often as maybe we'd like. And I was quite surprised because it's a 12A and I'm not a parent, but I was like, some of these creatures do come across as being a little bit scary. They, you know, they're kind of drawn a little bit kind of more aggressive than possibly they would be if it was skewed towards a PG or something. And so I was just, you know, so I have corner of my eye when I knew if there's going to be a jump scare or like when the snake arrives, I'm just like, no, yeah, the kid's all right. She's not cowering in fear. It's like, good. So, you know, maybe kids are made of sterner stuff than actually we give them credit for.
Kids are desensitized today. Let's face it.
Yeah. And then also, we don't know what's going to happen at, say, like 3 a.m. in the morning when she wakes up in terror sweats. But we should probably call an end to this little episode. Joe, thank you very much.
Thank you.
How can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, we're Rule the Galaxy SW, whichever. You know, some places wouldn't let me get in without the SW for Star Wars at the end. So we're pretty much across most social medias at Rule the Galaxy or Rule the Galaxy SW. We have a podcast. We're almost 400 deep in podcasts now. So Rule the Galaxy is on all podcast platforms. And then we've really kicked it into the YouTube side of things. And we've had a lot of fun with that because some of our guys like to show off all their toys or collections and things like that when they're on the show. So just Rule the Galaxy or Rule the Galaxy SW pretty much everywhere, and just love working with you guys, talking to you guys, and it's been a great time getting to know more about you over the last few years. So thanks for having me on.
We don't have any listeners' questions in this episode, obviously, but if you want to send them in, Mr. Newbold can tell you how you can do it.
Email radio@fanthatracks.com. Head to links.fanthatracks.com for links to our social media feeds, Fantha Tracks TV and Fantha Tracks Radio. Thanks to James Semple for the Fantha Tracks intro, Blues Harvest for our Making Tracks opening music, and Mark Daniel and Vanessa Marshall for our voiceovers. New episodes drop Tuesdays and Fridays at 7 o'clock UK time. Our weekly news show, Good Morning Tatooine, goes live Sundays at 9 o'clock UK time on Facebook and YouTube. And remember, Fantha Tracks is absolutely free, so it costs nothing to stay updated on all the latest Star Wars news.
That's me done for this episode. Joe, thank you so much, mate. I will
thank you.
See you very, very soon, no doubt. And as always, everybody else, take care, and may the Force be with you.
And with you.
Coming up next on Fantha Tracks Radio, it's Making Tracks.